people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. What is a lengthy criticism, a harsh criticism from one CPAD.
Had some choice words for Clarissa Shields.
The boxing world is becoming smaller and smaller for the self-proclaimed GWOAT, aka the big-mouthed narcissist. She holds titles granted by boxing politics, and with just over 12 fights, she labels herself the GWOAT, the greatest woman of all time. She has only one significant fight on her record. Her championship was won against an opponent who had been retired for 6 years and only had 8 fights. Her first title defense was against Perkins, a fighter who had been retired for 3 years and returned to compete in just 3 matches.
Say that myself all the time. Danielle Perkins only had about 5 professional fights at 42 years old and had never even fought in a 10-rounder. And this is who Clarissa had to go through for quote-unquote undisputed.
Shields is competing against part-time fighters. This raises questions about the legitimacy of her claim as the GWOAT and her frustration towards other women celebrated for their genuine accomplishments. Additionally, invoking racial arguments in this context is disingenuous. The struggles against racism deserve respect and should not be used as a defense when grifting is brought to light. Such actions contribute to the desensitization of race-related issues in society. Quite right. And a stout observation from CPAD. Some people would have you believe that anyone criticizing Clarissa must be a racist, that they're only doing so because of the color of her skin.
That's dishonest, disingenuous, and disrespectful.
Acting as a deterrent so that Shields defenders don't have to address the criticisms levied against her, because they can't.
So that she doesn't have to address them either.
Former champion Jamel Herring said enough is enough. It's okay to have favorites, but discrediting Clarissa Shields' accomplishments because of personal bias ignores the facts. She won her first world title in just her 4th fight and became undisputed in 2 different weight classes, something no other woman in boxing has ever done.
No, that's not true. Katie Taylor did that. She was undisputed at 135 and undisputed at 140.
Something no other woman in boxing history has ever done. And let's not act like she's the only one who's fought for vacant titles. Many respected female champions have won vacant belt after vacant belt.
But how many of them are calling themselves the greatest woman of all time, Jamel?
If you're going to question legitimacy, let's keep that same energy across the board. Her achievements didn't come from politics. They came from dominance.
Oh, they came from politics. Because unlike a lot of other content creators who all of a sudden started covering the women, I watched 3 separate sanctioning bodies gift wrap Clarissa vacant title after vacant title. In the middleweight division, she won 3 vacant titles, 3 more at junior middle, and 3 more recently at heavyweight. So when they're gift wrapping belts the way that they are, it's quite easy for you to become an undisputed champion at multiple weights because you don't have to go through what Katie Taylor went through.
Addressing the elephant in the room, it is true that there are many women boxers, respected ones, who won vacant titles, but they're not the ones calling themselves the greatest women of all time. That is Clarissa.
That's what you're not addressing. Are you really the greatest woman of all time for undisputed runs like that?
Dominance. You want to talk about dominance. It's easy to dominate weight classes where there are no women to fight. Where the talent pool is so shallow, you can become an undisputed champion relatively easy because the sanctioning bodies will gift wrap the belts for you.
No one's saying that Clarissa isn't skilled or that Clarissa isn't accomplished, but what they are saying is she's not the greatest woman of all times.
Yeah, vacant titles happen. Picking up a vacant title, it happens, but we all know that in the sport of boxing, not just for the women, but the men also, it's not the same thing winning a vacant title as opposed to taking it from a champion. I remember Demetrius Andrade, who was a champion at 2 weights, but nobody seemed to notice because all the titles he won were vacant titles.
That's not the same thing as winning your titles from Gennady Golovkin or Daniel Jacobs, so let's not pretend it is so we can go easy on Clarissa. It's not the same thing fighting a 42-year-old Danielle Perkins for 3 vacant titles as it is moving up in weight and challenging an unbeaten Chantel Cameron for all of hers. She was undisputed. She was the champion. It's not the same thing moving up in weight and taking on an undisputed Katie Taylor at 140 pounds, who's undisputed now, as it is Clarissa fighting for titles that no one is holding because the division is so barren, there ain't nobody there to hold them. Talk about dominance, that's the opposite of dominance, because there ain't nobody there to dominate. People need to stop pretending there is to crown Clarissa the greatest woman of all times. Give me a break. I'm not even going to address her bad attitude, her personality. I'm gonna stick to the facts and stick to the stats. When you're in the emptiest divisions in all of women's boxing, of course you're going to rule them. And that doesn't mean she doesn't deserve credit. She does, but not as much as she thinks. Not as much as her fans would like. And what they're arguing is for me and you to view her through the same lens they do, when the only reason they do is because of tribalism. Irrespective of the facts. I'm tired of pretending that's not what it is, when everything these supposed Shields fans know about her, you could read on a wiki. They don't actually watch her. They don't actually support her or show up to her fights. They show up to our discussions. God forbid you're giving Katie Taylor a compliment or Amanda Serrano a compliment, because then what they'll do is tear them down to prop up Clarissa, who they don't really support, by the way. Trying to force feed us this idea that she's the greatest woman of all times. Well, I ain't buying it.
Eddie, away from matters on Saturday, there's been so much boxing news, and one of the big, I think, stories in the last couple of days, and again, you can confirm this because you know what Twitter's like and social media, people just make up stories and run with them, but it's Shakur Stevenson. Obviously, look, big fight for him against William Zepeda. You've promoted the last couple of Shakur Stevenson fights. It seemed as though everything was fantastic. He's been over here. Sorry, just the one, apologies. What's the situation with Shakur Stevenson? Because we're hearing...
The situation is quite straightforward. We have a 2-fight agreement with Turki Al-Sheikh and Shakur Stevenson, which includes the Zepeda fight. And that's how it is. You know, I was with His Excellency today for a couple of hours and the team. You know, I saw the news as well, and obviously just wanted to say to him, you know, we do have this agreement, right? I mean, 1, it's papered, and 2, it's confirmed in front of everybody. And the answer is absolutely. So July 12th is the last of that agreement, but hopefully we can promote Shakur Stevenson for the rest of his career. I mean, I think he's one of the best fighters in the world. I've always said that our agreement with him is 2 fights, and we hope that it extends beyond that. And hopefully we can beat Zepeda on July 12th and then move into big fights.
Those are the answers that we were looking for, and they are coming to us from the horse's mouth. Not some journo via his anonymous sources, and not some boxing insider via his. Based on the information that was being put out there, I tried to understand why this could be happening. Also understanding that these are just rumors and should be treated as such. Also understanding that there are a good number of petty individuals in the sport of boxing who would like nothing else but to one-up Eddie Hearn any way they can, because there's a lot of people with a lot of axes to grind. But now we understand that the upcoming William Zepeda fight does satisfy the 2-fight deal Shakur had with Matchroom, and Eddie is not out of the picture like some people would have had me believe. I've wondered about that throughout, that because the Josh Padley fight happened on one of Turkey's shows and not a Matchroom show, and because the William Zepeda fight is also part of one of Turkey's shows, does that satisfy the deal? Because those were not, according to Hoyle, Matchroom shows. Those shows were financed by Turkey. But now we know. This upcoming fight is Shakur's final fight under Matchroom.
You read Twitter, we have a 2-fight deal with Shakur Stevenson and Turki Al-Sheikh. I was with Turki Al-Sheikh earlier for a couple of hours. That's it.
Leave it to the experts on boxing Twitter via their quote-unquote sources to manufacture a controversy where there isn't one. Seems to be the only thing they're good at.
Stirring the pot, starting shit.
From their little monetized accounts, willing to say anything and everything to stir the pot and drum up business because they get paid based off how many clicks they get, whether a story is true or not.
So that by the time everybody realizes it's all bullshit, they made their money already.
And so many who wish to appear connected and appear like they're in the loop. They're inside sources.
What even is that? Is that an ego thing?
And then there are some others that are a bit more malicious, that only really say what they're saying to drag someone's name in the mud. In this instance, Eddie Hearn. There were some who took this as an opportunity to try to make him look bad.
How?
There's been a lot of talk about fighters jumping ship over at the PBC. So this would seemingly be a retaliation that, look, Shakur Stevenson is jumping ship. He's leaving Matchroom.
He's leaving Eddie.
And this is all intended to make Eddie Hearn look bad.
Rick Glaser, I don't know if he's a journalist or a Twitter guy, but he says you've had some falling out with Turkey and things like that.
If I was, the last 3 hours that I was in his hotel room talking about all kinds of different future business across about 4 different sports, it's a shock to me. So, unfortunately, Rick Glaser, I'm sorry, I have definitely not fallen out with Turkey Al-Sheikh.
Rick Glaser, who for many years now has claimed to be a boxing insider, and I don't actually doubt that he is. I think he's connected, but I also think he's hit or miss.
I also think he's not operating on the same scale or the same wavelength as an Eddie Hearn,
who he's so critical of. And so often, it was just the other day, he claimed Eddie Hearn has fallen out of favor with Turkey Al-Sheikh, and rightfully so. I noticed it then that he didn't give a reason.
And I questioned the legitimacy of that claim. What could have caused Eddie Hearn to fall out of favor with Turkey?
Now, you often hear it said, don't shoot the messenger. But you can question him, and you can question the message based on who it's coming from. It's coming from Rick, who always has choice words for Eddie Hearn based on who his other business partners are, namely Oscar De La Hoya, Golden Boy Promotions. You're rubbing elbows with them.
So you start taking shots at him.
Just for it all to turn out to be bullshit, and for your credibility to, in effect, take a hit. Now, in fairness, Rick has been right about 1 or 2 things, wrong about others.
Wrong about this.
And this is what happens when you let your personal feelings get in the way. In trying to make Eddie Hearn look bad, you've made yourself look bad, Rick. You hurt your own credibility. You never should have said that shit.
It's not the end of the world.
Not for Rick. Just like it's not the end of the world for Eddie that you and the other gossip girls don't like him. On a smaller scale, I myself have encountered one or some situations just like this one with some members of boxing Twitter who wish to defame me and assassinate my character, spread false informations as a means to tear me down, the way that Rick Glaser would like to tear Eddie Hearn down. And I find that the best way to deal with these people is to not deal with them at all.
Not engage them.
As that would only further embolden them. And what they're really angry about is that you're doing as well as you're doing. So in that situation, the best thing to do is what you're already doing. Just business as usual.
That's the best revenge.
Not mincing words with these idiots so much as laughing at these morons. In men's super middleweight news, Christian Mbilli versus Masiej Sulecki is now set for June 27th in Quebec City.
The byproduct of not 1, but 2 fights that fell apart for the unbeaten up-and-comer.
Christian Mbilli and Masiej Sulecki of Poland are set to contest the WBC Interim Super Middleweight title on June 27th at the Videotron Center in Quebec City, Canada. It has been confirmed. The 29-year-old Mbilli of France via Cameroon has established himself as one of the world's finest at 168, but is among those whose career has been at risk of stalling as a consequence of Saul Canelo Alvarez's dominance of his division and the few demands placed on the Mexican by the sanctioning bodies. I've been waiting for this moment for so long. I've worked so hard to get here, and there's no way I'm leaving without the belt on June 27th, he said. I want to salute my opponent for having the courage to accept this challenge, but once we're in the ring, he'll have to face all the intensity and rage I've built up against those who refused to fight me. Sulecki, 35, and who lost to Diego Pacheco in August of last year, said, Christian Mbilli will not be an easy fight, but I have never felt better. I am in a great place with my team, and everyone is doing their part. On June 27th, I will make sure I do mine with a statement in his hometown.
One is left to wonder why Christian Mbilli would choose to go the WBC route when that did not secure David Benavidez a Canelo fight. So why do you think you'll have better luck?
Whether or not you actually get a Canelo Alvarez fight is not up to Mauricio Suleiman. It's not up to the World Boxing Council. It's up to Canelo. So going this route may be a waste of time. It might be. I happen to think he would have been better off staying the course via the IBF and taking on Kevin Lele Sajo as part of a Y2 promotion. I understand that in that situation, Christian would have been the away fighter, but I happen to think he could have beat Kevin Lele Sajo. And with the IBF, you had the added assurance that when the time comes, they will either order the fight or strip the champion. They've stripped Canelo before, 2 times.
Once at 160, then again at 168. That's how William Skull got the belt.
The World Boxing Council would never strip Canelo of a belt to hand it over to Christian, whereas the IBF are more indiscriminate.
They're a lot quicker to strip a guy for non-compliance. So on that predication, I think that Christian should have stayed the course. You go the WBC route, you get stuck with an interim title, and all that does is empower the World Boxing Council to get a piece of your purse. That's it.
Christian Mbilli is one of the most exciting fighters in boxing today, and this is the moment he's been waiting for, said Bob Arum, whose promotional organization Top Rank co-promotes with Camille Estefan's Eye of the Tiger. He's taking on a tough, experienced veteran in Maciej Sulecki, who's coming off a huge upset. This has all the makings of a firefight in front of one of North America's best boxing crowds. A world title is on the line, but in Christian Mbilli's case, it's also the culmination of a lifetime of work, said Estefan. That's why we're confident he won't miss his chance. We saw the beating Sulecki handed the fearsome Ali Akhmedov, but as we've been saying for years now, Christian is on another level. The winner of this fight will solidify their position as the top contender to Canelo and William Skull's titles. So, the stakes are sky high for Christian and for all of Quebec boxing. We're calling on the entire province to show up in Quebec City to support him on June 27th. Alvarez and William Skull, the IBF champion, will fight for undisputed in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia next week.
Christian Mbilli should win this fight. He should be able to beat the statuesque Maciej Sulecki, who's already been beaten by Daniel Jacobs and Demetrius Andrade and Diego Pacheco.
Diego knocked him out.
But Sulecki has since rebounded off that loss with a win over Ali Akhmedov earlier this year in February. Now he's got Christian in front of him, and I think that Christian is going to steamroll him. I think that Christian is going to outwork him. Whether or not he stops him,
well, that's something else. We'll see. But at minimum, I think Christian can win a points decision and fortify his position as the WBC's interim champion. Now, whether or not that gets him a Canelo fight, that's up to Canelo.
Not the World Boxing Council.
It's established. They will not impose sanctions or deadlines on Canelo Alvarez. Whatever Canelo Alvarez wants, Canelo Alvarez gets. And if he wants to give Christian a shot, he'll give him a shot. But if he doesn't,
tough titty, bitch.